We are back here, another episode with the living legend back in the United States of America, Steve Laffey, former presidential candidate, former mayor of Cranston, Rhode Island, and the best business financial man you can ever find in your life. Steve, always a pleasure having you on.
Great to be with you, Rob. It's been too long. I'm sorry. It's great to be back. I was away for several weeks taking my and my big thing, of course, is education and why we should close the public schools. But one of the proofs of that is my 16-year-old son has already graduated from Colorado State University. He's at graduate school in the Netherlands for advanced econometrics. So it was very hard to leave him, but we went around, a bunch of Europe. But living, talking, breathing, close the public schools, please, because most of it's free and the schools stink and the test scores keep going down and yet everybody tries to fix it. We're going to fix it. We'll do that. We'll do this. And another millions of kids suck wind for another year this year. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, let's talk about the public schools. I mean, President Trump's been talking, and he seems like maybe he'll do it, but he is a bag of wind at times.
Yeah.
Time will tell that he's going to shut down the Department of Education. Elon Musk in the mix there as well. Your kids are kicking ass right now. They've been kicking ass throughout their lives. Graduating early, getting good jobs, working hard.
Yeah.
So you've done the right thing. A lot of parents are trying to do the right thing with their
Yeah.
kids, but the public schools pretty much suck, as you stated throughout the many shows we've done together. So let's talk about that. Do you think that President Trump should shut down the Department of Education? I think that's a no-brainer. After that, what should we do besides that? I know you're in favor of shutting down the whole system, but
Yes, President Trump, I hope, and this is the problem with President Trump because he lacks the work ethic to do it in the right way so it sticks. That's what he does with tariffs. That's what he does with lots of things. He just throws things out there. We're going to develop the Gaza Strip or whatever, some nonsense, right? But when it comes to education, what he should do, and I hope he does, because someone listen, Mr. President, you only got like 100 days. That's why they write books about it, because it starts backing up. People start getting their friends, they get their other people, everything backs up as far as nationwide. But yes, he should bring legislation to the Congress on all these topics. You can do it one at a time, you can do it in a batch, but one would be to close down the Department of Education. Now, there are things within the Department of Education that he might want to keep. He might want to still be, and I wouldn't do this, but he might want to still be involved in student loans or this or that, right? We do as a country would be hard pressed to say we don't want poor kids to go to college who should go to college. But we can handle that. My fear for President Trump is that he just is haphazard. He'll come back to education in 3 weeks. It'll be a big story. He'll bluster around about it, but we need legislation, not executive orders. You're going to need legislation to close down the Department of Education. So let's just say that he does get that done. We save a couple of $100 billion. It's sort of like the Department of Energy. No one's saying that we shouldn't transport nuclear waste back and forth. We'll just hand it to the military. That's, by the way, the Department of Energy does some of that stuff. But the building the Department of Energy in, he should be in there, not himself. Do what I did in Cranston. Go in there and videotape people not working. Then present to the country what this is all about. Even on USAID, USAID is it's haphazard. It's not like, all right, I want to make a presentation to the nation as we introduce this legislation. This is how much money they're wasting on transgender crap. And they are. It's a rogue agency, Plauder. But back to specific education, if we can get it closed down and returned to the states, that would be the beginning of kids starting to learn. But it would be a long time after that. So there's several things that have to happen. Wage growth in this country and the return of the middle class would have to happen so one parent can stay home and take care of kids. You cannot have these latchkey kids who just go off to school because both parents are working. I don't care where it is. And then they come home with their cell phone and they're staring at something and they're not learning and parents don't know. Parents have to be involved in their kids' education. And parents do want to be involved. Don't get me wrong. But we have too many single families, too many inner cities where kids don't learn. Then you take the illegal aliens who are all over remember all these things like the circle of death for America that he can unwind. If the illegal aliens leave, or legislation, no illegal aliens can take part in public health or public schools.
they're out.
Then you'd have some kids in inner cities who would be able to learn again because they're sitting with some kids who speak Spanish and no English, and they're in the class. And then the kid who speaks English can't learn. Everything's disruptive. It's one of the real bad reasons. But the next thing that should happen, it has to be a state issue. Like in Colorado, where I live, let's take a state where school choice really works and even Democrats are okay with it. So in this state of Colorado, homeschooling is growing like a weed, like I did, my wife and I did. And we can talk about that. Charter schools in Fort Collins, Colorado, I think there's 50 charter schools.
Wow.
In Rhode Island, where I am from and where I lived and was mayor, I think in the whole state there's one. The whole state. So in Rhode Island, they're sucking wind every kid. Here, and here's what happens even within So think about a thing within public schools. If you live here and you have 3 high schools in Fort Collins, or anything in what we call the county, it's hard to believe you can do this because you can't do it in other states. You could go to that school over there because they got a great Algebra 1 teacher. As long as you're willing to transport the kid over here to the great history teacher, you could actually go to 2 schools. Or you could say, that school doesn't have what my kid wants. I'm taking my kid to this public school. So all the public schools actually compete with all the charter schools. So we have a pretty good situation, not in Denver where they're sucking wind and, these cities, right? But we have a pretty good situation in the state of Colorado to grow charter schools, to grow homeschooling, and that's what's happening. But even in Colorado, when a reasonable group of people get together, this happens all around the country, happened when I was mayor, happens everywhere. Less kids, they want to build more schools. Less fires, they want more firemen. The whole thing is preposterous. But that's what's happening. And it seems though, no matter where you go, every bond issue always passes. $300 million to build schools. And you're like, wait a second, we know no one's having any kids, unlike me, who have 6, right? We know people aren't having, like, what do you mean? Like these schools should be restaurants or office buildings or, I don't know, they could keep corn in them or something. I don't know, it could be silos. So, but even here, they have these things, and even 25 people go crazy, like, oh, we're sorry, we're actually, we won't close down that school. And then they find out that in Fort Collins, where I live, in this year in high school, they are losing a whole nother school in the city. Homeschooling's rising. So when you get rid of the Department of Education, if you can do it, you won't have this onus of we have to obey these rules, we have to do this, we have to do that. That'll be the beginning of success. And so it has to happen. This is this critical for our future of our country, along with debt, along with China. Education without it, we're totally hosed. We're totally hosed. We have 25-year-old kids in that generation that's 30 to 20 who have no idea what's going on. They still can't make change in restaurants. They're not getting ahead. And everybody sees these people. Yeah. And then people now will blame the pandemic, which is 4 years older and blah, blah, blah. But they're the ones who shut down the schools. They're the teachers who wouldn't come back to school. So no one takes the blame. So yes, a lot more has to be done. And the next level, by the way, with the federal involvement, and the opposite of Biden, is to get rid of all these problems at the higher education level with student loans. That's the next step he has to take on. Because
so we're talking right now, Steve, about one reconciliation bill. There could hypothetically be 2. It seems like I talked to Senator Allen earlier on. He seems to think there's going to be 1. I've talked to other people in the Republican Party that are close with the administration. They seem like it's going to be 1. So you're going to just push a lot of junk into one bill. It's fine because you're going to have 60 votes. No one wants to vote. The Democrats aren't going to vote for a Republican bill unless it's, the trans or whatever the heck they want. Regardless of that, Steve, all these EOs are nice and fun. The DEI, getting men out of women's sports, it's all great. I'm all for these things. They should be law, but they're not. And all these EOs mean nothing because someone could come in like Jared Paulus, God forbid, is the next president of the United States, and just get rid of all these EOs and just bring it back to what Biden did. So what are we doing here? Is it just bullshit that he's just throwing around here?
Yes. And that's why when I ran for president unsuccessfully, I said I would never do an executive order. I would take everything to Congress. And it's the congressmen who have given away all the power. The House of Representatives, the Senate, They've given it to the executive and they've given it to the Federal Reserve, and they just hang out and they blame other people. The Freedom Caucus says this. They don't do crap. They got 38 people in that Freedom Caucus, and they don't block anything, do they? Did they block anything? Really? Then why do we have so much?
They gave a little fight with the government shutdown, and then
Yeah, small L.
Yeah,
they don't get on the. They don't do what they have to do. Nobody does.
Sure.
They're just there to hang out and go back to the constituents and say, "I'm in the Freedom Caucus. I'm from a conservative district, and vote for me in. I'm a former wrestler. Here we go." I mean, it's preposterous to give the president this much power because we're ruining the republic, and we're at the point. See, we're at the point where these things are all tipping together, and Trump could reverse this stuff, but he won't do it unless he reverses the debt scheme. And that's the number one thing. So education is really important. Now, getting rid of USAID is really important. Having the Doge people go in and get really smart computer people, which I'm sure is what Elon Musk is doing. He's got people who are in their 20s who are way smarter than me on computers, pointing out all this stuff. But unless you get the public behind it, because here's what's going to happen if Trump wins. Remember, G plus I plus C plus X minus M is your gross domestic product. So G is government, C consumer, I investment, X minus M is imports. And we run like a 2% negative. That's why he wants these tariffs, but it's wrong-headed about tariffs. If we had a balanced budget on exports and imports, our GDP would grow at a net 2% more, right? So, but G has gone from 20% of the economy to 25, and it's going to go back to 20. But along the way, if he does it fast, we will have a bad recession. He should prepare people for it the way Reagan did. Reagan had a real recession first in his term, and we came out of it in 84, and he won re-election with 49 states. I'm afraid that Trump is so slow and haphazard about what has to happen that even if it starts to happen, it destroys the 2026 election cycle for the Republicans, and here we are again. Here we are with the same stupidity that we saw, with Obama coming in, all this kind of stuff. So he just doesn't have the ability. Let's face it, he already had a term. And he had deregulation, and we had great judges. Great. But when it came to the deficit, when it came to some of these structural things, he didn't do anything either. In fact, he signed off on closing down the economy, the PPP program, all these kind of things that really cost him the election, number one. He should have been doing this in 2016. At least he's doing it now. But to finish with education, it is the key to success if we can get rid of the Department of Education. It's the beginning of the next structural things that have to happen, including higher education.
Well, the PPP program was a joke. That was a scam. The CARES Act was a joke. Also, was a scam. And they just ran up the deficit. Yeah, Biden ran up the deficit too as well during his term. Yeah. But Trump was worse.
Worse. They're bad. These are terrible things. And the thing that the American public needs to know is there's almost nothing to show for it. In other words, if you
people are running around and said, I got a $1,200 check, I got a $600 check, I got $2,000 in like 12 months. Big deal. I mean, what is that going to really do for your life? I don't know. I just think the whole thing was a sham. All these people have made up these fake businesses. They were getting all these free loans, free money was going everywhere. No one asked about it because of COVID, and no one gave a damn. And that was it. There was one person that voted against the CARES Act, Thomas Massey, and that was it.
That was it. One guy. One guy
that's got cojones in the whole freaking Congress.
He is, by the way. I would disagree with him on foreign policy, but at least the guy does what he's supposed to do,
Right.
Like, he's a smart guy from MIT, and he's more of a libertarian than I am. I'm a strong national defense guy. But I love the guy because at least he does what he doesn't give a rat's ass. One guy, 434 other clowns. That's the ratio today. One good guy. Think about it. What does Rand Paul do these days? What does he do? Since the guy attacked him from behind, who should be in jail forever, he doesn't do anything. He has no bill to balance the budget. He's accomplished nothing to stop government spending. Why doesn't he just resign?
Well, he's not his father. We'll just say that. So.
No, and his father didn't accomplish much either, but at least he had the 800 number during campaigns back before. I don't know if you're too young to remember that. When he got on TV, he would just say, call the 800. He was good about it. Now he sells gold, I guess. So, but I like both of them. But they're not. They're not like pissed to get things
Right.
done. They're just establishment, not the father's. Rand Paul is just now an establishment guy on TV, very calm. We should do this. He should have his hair on fire and be screaming, and that's what I'd be doing. But no one does that anymore. They just don't do it. There are no Jack Kemps. There's nothing, and we got a real problem.
I wanted to ask you this about the tariffs because I was listening to a podcast earlier, doing some yard work, and this woman was talking about the tariffs, and she said this is how she described it. I want to just see if this is correct. She said she was at the hairdresser. The hairdresser said, "Oh, the Trump tariffs are bad." She said it was good. She said because it'll make sure that she said it's like hairdressers that are just flying in from different countries, cutting your hair, and then leaving with all the money. She said the tariffs make sure people are buying local and from countries in this country instead of countries overseas. It sounds a little strange
I
to
would
me, but
suggest
what
you
is your
turn.
opinion?
I would say turn the channel. Let's go back a second because that doesn't. I don't know even know what's going on with the people flying in. So I believe, and I've said publicly since 2005, that the tariffs on communist China should be so onerous that we don't trade with them. And I've been right. They've taken, since entering the World Trade Organization, the extra trade advantages, built up their
The World
military.
Trade Organization with China, can we explain this to the viewers and
Yeah,
listeners that
yeah.
this came through Bill Clinton?
And George Bush.
Okay.
Together, it overlapped both administrations that communist China was allowed into the World Trade Organization to get better, most favored nation, blah, 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 better trade deals and so forth. The thought, by the way, the journalist had another big article about it. People write articles like, the thought was that it would help them become a democracy. I want to be on the record since 2005 when I ran for the US Senate. That is a bald-faced lie. There isn't a single person who thought that. Nobody thought that. They just thought there was lots of money to be made. And they did. Rich people made lots and lots of money. Poor people and working class people in Youngstown, Ohio got their asses kicked. And that's how Trump won in 2016. That's what happened. Our manufacturing base was totally destroyed, even though it was getting smaller. So the idea of how to get it back, and let's go back to tariffs, would be that, in my opinion, you would never put tariffs on Canada. Canada is an ally. We would have a so free trade does work best among allies. So if we went to the United Kingdom tomorrow because they left Brexit and said, listen, we want a free trade agreement with you, Canada, Japan, Australia, the Five Eye countries, the ones we actually share real data with, even France. Well, then the law of what we call the comparative advantage would take place. If someone can produce milk cheaper, these are all things you learn in economics. These are all things that would happen. And economic growth would be longer. And yes, there would be some displacement. But when you do free trade among people who average like $50,000 in income per GDP or per person, let's say, you don't have this kind of crap that happened with China. So the other thing that Trump says about, or people say about tariffs, is they're going to cause inflation. That is a bald-faced lie. Inflation is a monetary event that's funded by the government when it happens, like happened in 2020 to today, right? When the printing presses go and government spending went out of control. If indeed, there's two things about tariffs to really explain to people. If indeed they doubled we say we had no eggs, which it seems like we don't have any eggs right now, but let's say we didn't make any eggs and all the eggs came from outside. And we put tariffs on eggs, doubled the price of eggs. They went from $6 a dozen to $12 a dozen. The thought process that we all would eat the same amount of eggs is sort of nonsense, right?
Right.
Like there's what we call the elasticity of demand. People make different choices. They buy different things. They eat less eggs and more lentils, whatever, right? So, or white bread. So two, the thought process that you would collect all this money by putting high tariffs on other countries that Trump says, that's a lie too. Because people do different stuff. But the big point to make about tariffs that Trump should make better is that if the tariffs are on the right industries that we need to have in our country in case of a war, then that's a different ballgame. In other words, if we say we need aluminum manufacturing more, we need to a fabricator big enough to fix the Golden Gate Bridge if it gets bombed, we need 4 more places to build submarines, and we need rare earths, and we need things, right? That's a different tariff than just saying on everybody. So Trump has made a giant mistake with starting off with Mexico and Canada, especially Canada, because he didn't put them on. They didn't do anything to get out of the 25% tariffs.
Well,
The stock market
it's that, Steve, but there's a problem here too with Mexico and Canada. They're oil producers. We get our oil from both countries, and he's taxing it now. I mean, there is a pause now
right.
for a month.
You're exactly
But he's
right.
taxing it, and he's talking about bringing the prices down. We just went through this with Biden and Harris, and now you're taxing the people, and the prices went up. We were here in Florida. We were at 278 for regular, and just within a week, we're at 325. The jump. I mean, it's crazy, and I just don't understand
There's
what the
no
play
understanding.
is here.
For example, on the flip side of the tariffs, if Justin Trudeau, who's leaving office because he visited
He's
the
a
president,
clown.
but if there was a strong person there, if I was the president or the premier of Canada, for example, when Trump said I'm putting 25% tariffs on your goods, I would just say, that's totally fine, Mr. President, we're going with 50. And if he said we're going 50, I'd say we're going to 100. Because here's what would happen with Canada. Oil and other things to make cars not only go across the border both ways, because we have refining plants that do certain types of oil, they have certain types of products. In 3 or 4 weeks, there wouldn't be any automobiles for sale by Ford, General Motors, or whatever, because they go back and forth with things, because the lower competitive advantage is already working. So we should never even entertain this with allies. We can do things with allies. We can say, listen, we're putting a tariff on this specific product because we need to find it in our country being manufactured, whatever. They do that with milk in Ontario or in Quebec or whatever. They can't, when we do the NAFTA thing for people with Canada, they have a problem with their milk people, their farmers in Quebec. So we always make exceptions for the fact that there's going to be riots in that country. I get that. But the thought process that you would collect a lot of money on this stuff to pay off the debt is complete nonsense, because you will end up with more things in America, but that's why you want things in more North America. And that brings you to why Marco Rubio did a smart thing, in a sense, by going to Panama and trying to put more emphasis on what's south of us. If he
They should take the canal. There's no
military.
military.
I totally agree. So this is the thing about Trump. There are really easy things to do that you become stronger. In Reagan's time, he was hit with that air traffic controller strike.
Right.
It may seem very minor today, and at the time, it seemed kind of minor. But when he fired every one of their butts, right?
Yeah.
The people in the Soviet Union, you go back and read when they found the documents, they were writing things like, this is a guy to take serious. So Trump has a couple of easy wins he should have gone for immediately. He should have went to the treaty we signed. There are exceptions within the treaty. He should have went to Congress and said, listen, we're not having this anymore. Panama has no national defense. They have nothing. They don't have any national defense. They have zero, just so everybody knows. China's controlling both coasts. Present the evidence. I think it's true. Just present some evidence. Make it as good as Teddy Roosevelt did before he went storming away, right? Just make it whatever. And then just take it back. That's it. Do it. And then all of a sudden, by the way, the people in Cuba are like, whoa. The guy Maduro in Venezuela is like, whoa, what's going on here? We haven't dealt with that. And Iran will be like, whoa, you may drop some bombs, right? Yeah. So there are easy wins that you always take early on in administration, and Trump refuses to do so. There's no need to talk about taking back the Panama Canal and not doing it. I mean, Greenland's a whole nother deal, right? It's a real country with them, Denmark's an ally. Panama is easy peasy. It's like Reagan rescuing the students from that little country I don't even know the name of in the 80s, right? It was like, wow. It's like Margaret Thatcher heading down to the Falkland Islands. Wow, we love Falkland Islands. Anybody ever take a look at how big that is? How many people are on it? But she won big credibility back there. She's the Iron Lady for something to do. Trump should do a couple of easy victories, but he seems to refuse to do the work. And that's because he's lazy. Ultimately, Trump, and the problem he'll have going forward, he don't get me wrong, he's up early, he's up late. He's talking all day long. He's got Twitter. But inherently, to get the real work done, he's lazy and he doesn't do it.
Question about Africa. In 2060, they're going to have the youngest population in the world.
Africa.
You, yeah, the whole continent. And not even just that, Steve. We're having issues making babies here, as you stated earlier on in the show. So we have a continent with many countries that have rare earth minerals that are a lot of money. I know there's rare earth minerals in Canada as well, but China has a big say in many countries in Africa. They're paying money to get the roads put in. They're doing this. They're doing that.
Bring Chinese workers, by the way. They bring their own workers. But go ahead.
And there's actually Africans now coming into China. This is from what I read, because China was having an issue with making babies. This is due to their own problems. Yeah. And there's Africans going into China and they're mixing now. And you're seeing that. So there's a lot of things going on in Africa right now. And again, we're behind the eight ball. This isn't just Biden. This isn't just Obama. This has been going on for years to come. Again, the biggest continent in the world. We're behind the eight ball, the youngest population. So I don't mean to go into a different subject. I mean, no, we're in a way different subject. But I think this is important for people to hear about and know, because there's going to be a lot of money being made here, and we're behind the eight ball as always.
The whole continent of Africa, you're correct. It's too big to talk about. We can take a country by country. I'm not an expert in, but you're right. There's a lot of young people. We need to do a much better job of being a voice, a consistent voice for Africa, for freedom, for the countries that have freedom. And we need to get involved from time to time and buttress our weight versus what other countries are trying to do. China will help autocrats. Russia's trying to help tyrants. But this is why we cannot have an isolationist Congressman Massey policy. We have to be a force for freedom in the world, everywhere.
Well, Bush did a little bit about this when he was in as president. He did some health care over there, did some stuff with AIDS. That was his big thing down there in Africa. I don't know exactly what the country was that he was involved with, or countries, but he was down there, and that was a big thing. But it seemed like since he left, we don't really have a presence in Africa at all.
No, I agree. It's very sad. And it's so removed from what we need to do. And it's such a big project. I don't know if they're ever going to get, to be honest, I don't think Trump even thinks about it. I don't think the administration's even thinking about it. So, but it's a very important thing. Lots of young people growing up, and are they going to have free countries? Folks, the more free countries there are, the better it is for America. That's all there is to it. The more tyrant countries there are, like China, the worse it is for America. It's very simple. So we want to help people who want to have freedom. And that's, whether it's people like, oh, we shouldn't get around some of these countries, whether what's going on in Nicaragua, what goes on in some of these South American countries, we should be a very strong voice directly south of us to promote freedom. And if it means, and I've said this before, this is why I don't like Pompeo. I'm glad he's not back. Everybody thinks, oh, he was pretty strong. He told Maduro in February of 2019 to leave the country. Maduro went to the tarmac. A Russian advisor told him to stay. We should have told him, if you stay, you're dead. Is there really a purpose of the CIA, to be brutally honest about it, unless we can tell Maduro, you leave now or we kill you? Yeah. And if he had left Venezuela, we have millions of people in this country from Venezuela who are middle-class people. We wouldn't have that. So when you say, oh, America should intervene, and the Shah, was it better under the Shah of Iran, or what happened after the Shah of Iran with Jimmy Carter? What was better? Yeah. 45, 50 years of complete nonsense, of me reading the paper? What's better? Maduro dead, installing the lady who won, having people cheering, putting in a constitution, having them develop their oil fields, and not hearing about it again. What's better? It would be better for them.
The Shah, that was back when it was very Americanized in Iran. They wore jeans. They watched American movies before that Jimmy Carter nonsense went on. And God bless his rest his soul, rather. But
That's
it's
a terrible
truly
president.
sad how that country just went into a full blown change, and they're a theocracy now, where they used to be, pretty
So
democratic people. Go ahead.
as I've said for 20, I've said since college, since 1980. So there's still like pretty secular people who walk around. Why not just kill the mullahs? What are we doing? Why don't we just kill them?
Mhm.
I still have no understanding of why we just don't kill them.
Right.
Because most people in Iran want to be. If you talk to the diaspora of people who left Iran, did an interview with a guy when I was running for president. These people are productive. They want their country to be free. They're Arabs. I mean, I hate to say the way they are, the Shia Crescent and Shias versus Sunnis, but they're more secular. 90% of the people live in this country. But yet, what do we do? We listen to the left-wing papers who are like, oh, they had stalled the Shah of Iran. Wasn't that terrible? And the people were impressed. I'm like, oppressed? They were oppressed? What happened since then? Iran's killed US soldiers and blew up in Beirut. They take down planes. They're behind Hamas. Where's Mr. Strongman Trump? He said that all hell was going to break loose if they didn't release the US people held it by Hamas. They haven't released them, at least one of them, I think. So when Reagan was around, that thing ended, right?
Yeah.
Now Reagan's only mistake was he just didn't end it. He did Iran Contra stuff rather than no, that's not even enough. You people are dead. But he had to build the military because it was so bad under Carter. That we lost troops. Remember, we lost troops going because France said we couldn't fly over their airspace to go save these people under Carter. They ended up in a desert. We had dead troops because our military was terrible under Carter. But anyway, not to go to the back. But always be promoting human rights, always be promoting freedom. And why not undermine governments when you can? I'm not sure why we wouldn't.
Steve, 2060, Africa's population is going to be 2.8 billion people. Okay. And that's a place where if we really still want to be
Yeah,
running the world in the top country in the world, we need to have a presence there.
yeah. And
That's a lot of people.
So you can go pick a country that's mostly on our side and be really friendly with them and make inroads and do a free trade agreement with them and then open up a university there.
China's building roads, they're building hospitals,
right.
and then they got these countries by the cojones.
Right.
They're like the World Bank for these countries.
Right. And that, by the way, that gets you to the World Bank and the IMF. They all have to be ended. That's totally, we haven't gotten to that story. Hopefully Trump will get to that stuff, right? Yeah. These are the worst organizations of all time. I mean, all they do is go to countries that go broke and say, you're really broke. We need austerity. What are you talking about? We're broke, right? They really, I mean, it's so dumb. The whole World Bank thing is so dumb. But so we just could do a much better job. And maybe it's just now being selective right now with countries that we can win with. But remember, even though the Chinese will build the roads, and even though China will do the infrastructure and take out the minerals, people hate the Chinese. Everywhere you go, everybody hates the Chinese. If you're in Rome, I was in Rome. I was in a store. This happens all the time. You're in the store making friends with a guy who runs a store, and he's talking, I'm talking, and we bought some stuff from him. And it all made in Italy, not in America, I know, but a couple of shirts, whatever. Income Chinese people. They seemingly all okay. They do the same thing. They don't say hello. They touch everything. Really obnoxious. The guy goes to greet them. They don't say anything. They touch everything, feet of his clothes, and they walk out. The guy turns around. And he looks at me. And I'm like, he's like, this sucks. I'm paraphrasing. But this isn't the only time this has ever happened. They're pushy. So when Trump said, why doesn't Trump say right now? Here's a beautiful one to do about education. Screw the higher education people. You know what? I view all Chinese in America studying here as spies. They all need to leave tomorrow. I'd be cheering left and right. Get them the hell out. Get every Chinese. Now, that gets to immigration, which I think I would disagree with a lot of these people. You got some really smart people who are scientists in some countries. Get them here. You got people who are veterinarians. Bring them here. You got people who are plumbers. People should just have. If you want people to come, if people want to come to this country, we need talented people for things we don't have. And we need everybody to sign off the way they did 100 years ago. Neither they nor their kids can ever be on welfare, cannot go to public schools, cannot do this, cannot do that. They just need to come for the next 15 years and make it in America. You do something like that, you'll have talented people come. And we're missing that because we're going to have to keep growing. America needs immigration. It just doesn't need a bunch of Haitians coming over here giving us voodoo. I mean, the whole thing is preposterous.
He only, as you stated earlier on in the conversation, he's only got, 100 some odd days to get something done. And if he doesn't, and we're already 15-ish days in, and,
by the end of May, if the Department of Education isn't closed down, does it really get closed down?
No. There's just a lot of EOs, and the EOs aren't going to do anything because 4 years, those EOs are out.
Yeah, granted, they probably won't have transgender men, whack job men swimming in swim meets. Great. But these are tangential things to the real issue.
Right.
Like the real issue of parent plus loans that are unlimited for people to send their kids to college or grad school when they major in something they can't get a job in, and the parent holds on to $200,000 of loans. That's a big problem that needs to be ended.
Then what is the issue with the Dodge or the Doge or whatever the hell it is, the Doge? Do you feel like that's going to get anything done? Or is that just a lot of razzle dazzle out there? Well, your friend Vivek Ramaswamy, he cashed out already. He's going to
I said on another channel a month ago that those two people don't last together for a week. They lasted like 2 weeks. Vivek looked around saying, I'm out of here, right? I'm running now, like an idiot. He's running for governor of Ohio. He'll never be. He believes Brahma is the one and only God. That is not a winning message in any state. Maybe Rhode Island, maybe where no one goes to church, maybe Vermont. Ohio has these parts where they're very Christian, and they'll wave at them. They'll wave. That's great. Thanks so much. And they're not vote like. I said this at the very beginning. Like, I'm not going to win probably, but he's not even getting past Iowa. And I don't think so. But
they're not going to elect a Democrat in Ohio. Let's be real.
You watch. I don't know. This is like he's not a winnable guy. He's not a likable guy.
No.
He's not friendly. He talks too
fast. The HB visa thing, when he said that Americans don't work hard, they're lazy, and that we need to bring the Indian people in and get more visas for them. That didn't play well. And then he left the administration with the Doge literally a few days after that happened.
Yeah, so just to Vivek for a second, we don't know Vivek Ramaswamy. He was going nowhere anyway because of these crazy way he talked. There's one God, but he doesn't tell people it's Brahman. There's other things like that. But he ran for president saying President Trump was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He had no criticism. I love Trump. He's a great leader. I just, there was no reason for him to run. Now, he didn't even get an appointment to something. He's not even the ambassador to Italy or India, let's say. He's nothing. So they gave him this Doge thing, which didn't work out. So he's effectively gone. So he wasted $25 million. Listen, if I had $25 million put into the campaign, I would have done better than him. That's what he did. He put $25 million of his own money and raised $3 million and went around for like a year and got nothing. He visited the most amount of counties ever in Iowa and got like three votes. I mean, nothing. It was just ridiculous. Just as I said would happen, right? Now, again, I put in 65 grand and went for a year trying to have a breakthrough moment, and I didn't, whatever. But I didn't spend 25 million. But back to this whole Doge thing. It can be very successful, surprisingly successful, because Elon Musk, with all his issues and problems, and he's going to lose a lot of his PE multiple on the car company now because in my opinion, because liberals won't even buy the car anymore. So that's a whole nother story. That's going to happen this year. You heard it here first. It's over for Tesla. Will get it. If Tesla had a normal multiple like Ford, it would trade at like, I don't know, down 90% from today. So that's, I'm not saying it's 90%, but that game's over. He wrote it. By the way, he doesn't care. He sold enough stock. That's what people don't understand. He sold billions of dollars of stock. So how do you spend $1 billion? What if the other thing all go broke? He's not got $1 billion. He
So
doesn't
you're
have 10
saying
million.
Tesla's going to go out of business? Is that what
No,
you're
no, no.
saying?
I'm just saying that that game is over for Tesla. He knows it. He sold a lot of stock. It'll be an existing car company. There's some good things about it. His promises are usually 10 years late, whatever. But the multiple put out by the Tesla fans on electric cars, the car itself is not that great, breaks down a lot, smashes into things. It's autopilot crap. It's so stupid.
Yeah,
But anyway,
that's scary.
it's so stupid. But he is a smart man, and he will find lots of savings. But they're going about it at the very beginning in the wrong way. For example, when you, and President Trump agreed to this, when you say hit a button by Thursday, which I think we're talking on the day, you hit the button and you can leave, you get 8 months of pay. That's stupid. If you ever ran a company, you would never, because what happens? Who's the first person to hit the button? The guy with 2 months till retirement. He's like,
Right.
I got 6 more months. He hits the button. That's 10,000 people right there. They're retiring anyway, right? There's millions of employees.
You got to get the people that suck, that stay, or they can't get a job anywhere
And they
else.
changed their mind about it today a little bit. The people hitting the button, the next group of people like, hey, I make 120 doing this. I can make 300 in the private sector. I got all this info. I just did this for a couple of years. I know how to placate this and do that, or lobby this. They're leaving too. You would never do it this way. You would close down departments like the Department of Education, they all would leave. You would then look over all the reviews of people that they all get performance reviews. You would then find the people with the most absentees, this, that suck. And you would send them notices that we don't need you anymore. That's all. So you start there. You do a hiring freeze, not the military, not this, not that, which is why I'm surprised, by the way, the one thing Trump should be doing right now, he should be doing an ad like they see on TV. He should do an ad for the U.S. Army where he's like, listen, I need the biggest, the baddest, the toughest sons of bitches that can come to join. I don't know what they were doing before. This is what I would do. I don't know what they were doing before. I'm not into any of that. We need big, bad, tough people who are willing to kill and die for our country. Let's get going. You in Alabama, let's roll. Because the Alabama, the Mississippi families that fund the people that die for our country versus the people in the northern part of the country, like they're not doing it anymore. One sergeant father said to his son, I know we got 5 generations of sergeants doing stuff in the U.S. Army. These people suck. We ain't doing the transgender operation crap. Tell them to stick it up there, whatever. That's what they said. That's why we can't get people to be in the Army. But he can change that. That would be a big
There's
thing.
also an issue with weight.
Yes, we need skinny people. We don't need fatzos. So a lot of that can be done. And we don't need a lot of this stuff, right? But the Doge people could find lots and lots of savings. He's smart. I think Musk, there's a chance that Musk does put a lot of this on a spreadsheet and presents it like he did with Twitter, right? 70% of the people are going it. It still operates. I don't know, right? So he's talented that way. I'm talented that way. We would find a lot of stuff. And I think he's got a lot of really young, smart people who joined up with him who just want to like do the computer stuff and say, whoa, they did what? They'll find the receipts. They'll find the overpayments. I think there'll be a lot that he can do. I just don't know whether they will. I don't know if this
What is the talk, though? They're saying the liberals are saying that it's illegal. Or
that just is stupid. It's not.
it's just bull. A lot of
Totally
bull.
correct.
Okay.
The new thing as we go to press today with the show is that they're like involved in the U.S. Treasury and they might be like upending the Treasury market. There's like 2 people doing read-only stuff and finding where they issue debt and what they'll do algorithms. They'll do things that's really they'll put the data in and say, what the hell? They'll find things that are anomalies. They may even find another 20,000 cases of fraud from the PPP program. If anybody looked, they'd find them, right? So there's a lot of things they can do, and I think that they could be successful. It certainly isn't bad. The guy works for free. I mean, it's if he can find ways to close this down, I just wish they would I wish they started in a different direction. For example, here's the legislation that would be great to have, that Trump would go to Congress tonight with. It'd be great to say, listen, I want you all to know I'm not against unions. Great to have plumber unions, great to have whatever. There's laws about that. I'm not screwing with that. Unions were set up because people were being oppressed, like in Allentown, Pennsylvania. But let me all show you what the federal workers make versus what you make, Joe. Right? And he puts up a screen of what they make, what their pension is, and he said, listen, this is too much. I'm bringing legislation to Congress, and we're going to get rid of all the unionization in the federal government. And it'd be better if it was a spoil system. When we had the spoil system, which some people don't know, Republicans won, all the Democrats left in the 1800s. Democrat came in, they fired everybody. Government didn't grow because they started from zero.
All right.
We go back to exactly that, but it was a way better system
Yeah.
than what we have. So, listen, the IRS is still doing things like, if people are old enough to remember, they're doing COBOL, a language that was 1980.
Yeah.
I did it in 1970. I did BASIC. That's the IRS today. So obviously it can only get better. It can't get worse.
But are we going to abolish the IRS? Talk about this now.
Again, in the first 100 days, he could have done this. See, you're talking about things that are, if he had just said, listen, you all hate the tax code, I hate the tax code, I'm going with this fair tax. He could have said the flat
999 or whatever the hell.
Anything. By the way, in the first 100 days, he'd have the votes.
Yeah.
And I would make it so you're going to raise more money because we need more money. And I would say things like I said in the past. If we have a fair tax and we tax everybody buying stuff, folks, it's really a wealth tax. When that guy buys $100 million boat, he's going to pay $20 million more, right? Mm-hmm. And even these illegal aliens, if I can't get rid of them, they're still buying bubble gum. We're going to tax them. Stuff like that. I think he could have got it done, but here we are.
He's just dicking around, wasting time. What is going on with the reconciliation bill? You never hear about it anymore. It's just in the wind. He keeps EO, and all the people on the conservative talk radio are jumping and dancing around like they are getting all these laws passed. Again, the next Democrat comes in, wipes it clean. Everything's back to normal.
And that's why, like your show is different. There are different people, but the real other problem is these MAGA crazy people. That some of them my friends. They just ignore everything that's bad. There's no critical thinking. They're just on the wagon, and they make excuses. Like the Gaza Strip one would be like, it's like North Korea. He's just throwing things out there to keep people out, and then he's going to do something different. I'm like, what? First of all, why is that okay for the president to do that? Like, why would it be okay if I was a CEO of a company just whipping stuff out at board meetings? I'm the CEO of a lemonade company. We're going to make a nuclear power plant. Oh, just kidding. We're going to go over into Uganda. Oh, I'm just joking around. Like, who would keep me around if I kept saying things that were totally ridiculous? Nobody. And yet, brainwashed people don't say, wait a second. First of all conservatives could just say one thing. I don't give a crap about everything else, but I want to know when we're getting to the balanced budget, when we're getting to 3% debt to GDP and economy growing, not 6%. I want to know the plan for that. I only care about one plan. Do whatever the hell you want, President. I'm a fiscal conservative, which is like 40% of this country. Are still really fiscal conservative people who don't like debt, who in the personal life don't do crazy things, and they know it's good for our children. He's doing nothing about that so far. I mean, as I tell people, USAID is 40 billion. Social Security is 65 trillion. Can someone take a calculator out and divide 40 billion by 65 trillion to ask me why we started with USAID? As if that's just a sideshow. Get rid of it. Right. Fix Social Security. Do something big. Because what I really fear is going to happen to President Trump, and it may not even be this year, but before it's over, the debt crisis will engulf him. And he'll be blamed for it.
Yeah. And they refuse to, they're never going to cut Social Security. So all these seniors that are all bitching and moaning about Social Security, they're not going to cut it for you. They're going to cut it if they cut it for someone like me.
Yeah.
They're not going to cut it for you.
No, that's right. That's not happening. And I'm now 63, so I'm fine and whatever. But old people keep taking from young people. But I mean, fix it. You don't have to take it from people. You just have to fix it so that Rob gets it. I talked to this forever. But if he doesn't take on a big thing, I'm afraid that eventually the US dollar will get really weak. Yeah. Because there's too many dollars. Right now, it's very strong. That's why I went to Europe for a while, right? Because when the dollar gets really weak, I won't go to Europe. I'll just hang out in America. But we're talking about some really big things. And he'd be way better just to take on one of them than to do the sideshow that's going on today. Because listen, the inconsistency just on
But
tariff.
they're afraid, Steve, to go after Social Security. He said it during the campaign. He's not going to touch Social Security, Medicare. But now they're talking about maybe Medicaid is on the block.
Right.
They talked about this in the RFK Jr. hearing. So again, you have to be careful because Medicaid has a lot of people that are very impoverished on it. You can't screw these people hard.
No, but you can say that if 37% of the population in California is on Medicaid, something went radically wrong.
Right. Well, that's fair. Yeah.
So someone like the Doge Group or someone can fix a lot of the stuff. I mean,
but is that to do with Obamacare, though, more so
some
than
of it's Obamacare, some of it that no one's actually going through the system. Someone's actually not, there's a system, the lack of checking in on people. Listen, if a person's paraplegic, if someone is dying of cancer and can't work, if someone is, we all get it. We're totally fine. Everybody in America can help these people, right? We're not going to do that. But there's probably a lot of people on Medicaid. And this gets back to a very complicated thing that Trump will never touch. One of the real problems of getting out of poverty is not people who don't want to work. It's that when you are on Medicaid and you have a housing allowance and you get food stamps, that when you try to get off this stuff, let's say that, and you do, you're hit with 100% marginal tax rates as you go up $1. You get to and people aren't stupid. So they make a thing like, wait a second, if I work in a bar at night, right, and I take cash, and I do this, I still make 50, 60 grand, but I get all these things. But if I was trying to get off, if I'm trying to get off the housing allowance, and I go from I make the numbers up for people listening, but if I go from income of 23,000 to 24,000, I lose my housing allowance of $1,200 a month.
Yeah, no, it's true. Because I'll be honest with you, during COVID, I had to go on Obamacare. And you start looking at the prices.
Yeah.
And if you make this much, it's $300 a month. If you make $20 more, it goes up to $400 or $500 a month.
You go to 2,000 if you make it. So what we need is a system, and that's why a different tax code would be better, where people don't suffer for anything more than, say, a 20% marginal tax rate, no matter what, as they climb out of poverty. So you lose, if you went from 30,000 to 40,000, you might lose enough of your, I'm just saying housing allowance or food stamps that you would lose as you go make $10,000 more, you lose 2,000 of it. And then people be like, okay, I'll do that. I got 8 grand more. Okay, let's go.
Let me ask you this question, Steve. If you go with that tax plan, I think right now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you may know this better than me. If you're making like 17, 18,000 a way, you're not paying any taxes. But when you get up to like 20, 21, you are starting to pay a little small tax.
That's why that's why you need a fair tax. That's why you need a different tax system.
But do you charge those people tax at 20% if they're at 17?
You can always do what we call it. This phrase is for this debit grant. You can actually just send people some money at the lower end so that they don't have the same. Let's just say, I mean, make this up. You do a flat tax, right?
Yeah.
The guy making 2,000, whether he sends in 200 or not is immaterial, right? The guy making 20 grand is supposed to send in 2 grand. We can tell the guy it's a flat tax, but if indeed you make 20 grand and you had a tough year, we're going to send you back $1,800.
Yeah.
I mean, we can make a flat tax progressive until it gets above 50, 60. These are easy things that are always like people say, oh, well, what about that person? I'm like, I don't know. We can always fix these problems. What I'm saying is the underground economy is so large that if you move to a fair tax, you're taxing people when they buy stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore people are buying stuff. And who buys the most stuff? Really rich people. You buy $100 million painting? Yeah, we'll take 20 million.
Yeah. What about the tax on tips, Steve? What do you see Trump doing with that?
I mean, the campaign went on, and I thought it was like, I actually thought it was almost like a joke.
He just went to Las Vegas a couple of days back and repeated that argument again for no tax on tips, that he was going to get it done.
I can't believe anybody would vote for that. singling out even just smaller and smaller things is so, it's beyond my comprehension. I didn't even brought it up, but him and Biden were going back and forth, you know,
Yeah.
no
Well, you got
tax.
to go for the big kahuna, which is
Yeah,
what we've just been speaking about,
right.
and getting people the money that way. Then you can focus on the small potatoes like
Remember, if
tax
you
on
don't tax
tips and all that.
tips, if you don't tax tips, but you get rid of the USAID for 40 billion, I'm not saying it's a wash. It's like, what are you doing? Like you're just wasting my time. We need absolute down, and we need actually more revenue coming in. So the only way you're going to get really more revenue coming in is to not have an IRS, to have some form of flat tax, fair tax, Herman Cain's 999 plan, which probably has to
But
be.
that's not going to get rid of the deficit. And just going back to the deficit issue again, what president is going to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense?
Me, only me.
Obama tried to do some silly thing with that Simpson Bowles plan that
But that's
never
the, yeah.
really played
Listen,
out.
we've had two unbelievable things that happened that nothing happened from. There was the Grace Commission, Peter Grace, a wealthy man, and then nothing happened, right? But then, and I talked publicly about this in 2011. There was Alan Simpson, U.S. Senator from Wyoming, and Mr. Bowles, a Democratic senator, and they came up with stuff. And I remember publicly being on radio and TV saying, "Listen, I wouldn't do any of this stuff in a sense." So, you know what I mean? Like, I know they tried really hard. They spent a year doing this stuff. They went around, and Obama didn't even get him a vote. I did TV shows where I actually have never met Alan Simpson. My son had lunch with him. He's supposedly a wonderful guy up in Wyoming. And I did like some shows where I'm like, if I were Alan Simpson, I'd be like swearing a blue streak. The man's old. He spent another year of his life trying to help the country, and no one gave him a vote. Now, if we had voted for, if they had voted for the Simpson Bowl thing, the deficit would not be what it is today. If we had put in what the Swiss did years ago, the Swiss debt break, where they can't let it go above, they have to balance the budget over a business cycle. Their debt, by the way, that's why I probably should think about buying some Swiss francs pretty soon. Their debt to GDP, or their debt to whatever, is 24%. Ours is 130. I mean, those are the things we need to put in. Where it's just like, how about one where no one gets paid if the budget's not balanced?
I want to get into these last 2 points. We're going to do another show because somebody wanted to do something on health, but we'll do that another time.
Yeah.
Last 2 points, Trump's cabinet. There is a rise, at least a small rise, in recruitment for the military. I know you just spoke about that.
Yep.
That's due probably to Trump coming in. I know Pete Hegseth, the new defense secretary, said that he's been trying to make sure that's a priority for him to get those people in there. What is your take? Let's start with Pete Hegseth. You know, he just scaled by very, very close to the edge, but he did get there due to J.D. Vance, 50-50 split. 3 Republicans against him, but he did make it through. Start off with Pete.
A very bad pick. God bless him for his service. A man who obviously has some great personal problems that I think have to still exist. He could be very successful though. So it's not that he's dumb. He's smart, but the way he should be operating right now. Hopefully, if I could advise Mr. Hegseth.
But you know, Trump was going to pick a loyalist.
Yes, that's
all these. They're all loyalists.
Only loyalists. Doesn't matter the talent. Gabby Gifford, whatever the hell her name is, a complete clown.
Tulsi Gabbard.
I don't know who does her hairstyling. I never see anything like it in my life. But anyway, so that's a terrible, terrible pick. I mean, you need someone serious in that. She's not serious. She's not a serious person, right? But Peter Hegseth is a smart person. So if Peter Hegseth operates this way, he brings in tomorrow. Hopefully, he's thought of this, and he should have went to the hearing like this. He should have went to the hearing and said, "Listen, I'm here with retired General Joe Blow. I'm here with procurement specialist, world-renowned Jimmy Smith. I'm here with," and he names 3 or 4 people that know how to get to the bottom of real problems, like really procurement. Who's screwing us? Where are the receipts? I'm here with the former head of the giant accounting firm, whatever, like Arthur Anderson, whatever. I'm here with these 5 people, and guess what? By myself, I'm not qualified to do this, but I'm qualified to get this information and make decisions. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through every receipt. When we find people bilking the U.S. government, we're going to go to the Justice Department and we're going to want them arrested. 2, we're going to figure out this procurement process and why these things cost so much. We're never doing this way again. 3, we got to figure out where we build our ships, where we build our stuff, and how many we need. I'll be back to you in 3 months on that. Look, I'm actually doing the job, right? The question, I get back to the same thing. If he does that, he could be very successful. Is there any indication that he's doing that?
No, but I'd like to find where those trillions of dollars they lost the day of 9/11.
No, listen, cash that went to Iran, all this kind of stuff. And it only counts if you arrest people, because that's the only way to stop behavior. Yeah. Whether it's the microcosm of me as Mayor Cranston stopping people sleeping and making sure everybody worked, or the macrocosm of the federal government, unless you actually arrest some people who are stealing and make them a human example and throw their asses in jail, then you got everybody backtracking like, well, can't do that anymore. I'm heading over here. I'm going to go live in Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I'm not doing that. Unless you do that kind of stuff, all is lost.
What's the issue with you and Gabbard? Is it because of the Edward Snowden issue?
Well, that's one issue. Yeah, he's obviously a traitor.
Right.
Like, come on. Like, you can applaud whatever you want. He gave away government secrets. You could say he did everybody a favor. You could say whatever you want. But when you ask the specific question to be the head of the NSA, the national people who listen in all the time, the answer to that question is yes, he's a traitor. I don't know who would vote for someone who said that Snowden wasn't a traitor.
Yeah.
But I'm a hardline guy. I'm not a dippy-doo-dah, blah, blah, blah. I didn't change a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I used to be a Christian. My father runs some thing in Hawaii. I did this. I put a one streak of, I look like something out of the 101 Dalmatians TV show. I don't do that. I'm just the way I was when I was 20. All these people adapt because they want power. So
hey, Trump used to be a Democrat too, you know.
Trump is making a giant mistake with just loyalists. Because they'll throw him under the bus before he throws them under the bus.
But to be fair though, when he went with all the people that they told him to pick last time,
yeah, they were bad.
It was a clown show.
It was a clown show. No. Listen, it's actually better. Like, to say this, it's actually better, but it's still embarrassing. There shouldn't be meetings with oil.
Because you had Jared Kushner running with Ivanka. I mean, it was a joke.
They were just, I mean, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was worse. I'm not saying it was better. It was worse. But this is the problem for America. Because Donald Trump is a complete narcissist, there are meetings that will remind people of what happened during Mussolini's time or during Stalin's time. There are meetings where people, they get introduced and the first thing they say is, that great President Trump, he's so wonderful. I want to tell you blah, blah, blah. It's like they have to say it before they talk. Just have a damn meeting. Thanks for having to the meeting. Yeah, here's what we got to do about offshore drilling in the Gulf of America. See, that's a good win, Gulf of America. I still call it Mount McKinley. I'm happy. When Trump does something good, I'm like, this is great, Gulf of America. Yeah, why didn't I think of that? I should have been saying that for 25 years. But he needs big victories on big topics, and he needs little victories right away. And if someone could point out the victory, other than maybe the U.S. aid thing, where he's actually looks like he might get rid of it. Yeah. If someone could point out a victory and it's February, let me know. I mean, a real victory where he's like, boom, we got one.
Here's the deal. Even this is very small. Again, this is not going to help the deficit, but it's a small victory that he could get if he had some cojones. Again, they passed that bill to keep men out of women's sports. It passed the House. It's in the Senate. It's sitting. It's sitting. It's sitting. If he had some cojones, he'd go over there and say, we're going to pass this bill. They just had all these little girls over there. He's signing the executive order, keeping men out of women's sports. But again, Jared Paulish, Shapiro, whatever the next Democrat comes in, they just wipe it clean.
It's got to be.
It's in the Senate.
Right. And this is where you actually do the political things and the small victories that help you with re-election. Not that he's running again, but it helps people in the future because
But it helps Vance. Somebody like Vance
yes,
should be out there and say, Mr. President, we got to get this done.
yeah,
Mr. President, let's do this.
It's widely popular on the margin. In other words, people hate you. People for you, but the people in the middle do not want to hear about 200-pound men wrestling with their 50-pound daughter. So it's a big winner. And yet he's got to drive it home with legislation.
Yeah.
You're right.
But again, just to go back to the fact, why is J.D. Vance not pushing him to do this when he is the front runner for 2028? Let's be realistic.
Yeah, I don't think he will be. I think J.D. Vance is a sideshow by himself, but I don't think he will be the.
Well, regardless, again, he's the vice president.
But you're right that he needs to make these victories and take credit for them.
Yeah, and if he does want to run, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
The bottom line is that, listen, the economy is now heading into a weaker period. The deficits are too big. A lot of the stuff will be too big for Trump to handle if he doesn't have big victories early, and he doesn't seem to want to have them, and that's going to be the problem as we talk 2 years from now.
I want to ask this last question before we cut loose about the economy, about the housing market. Obviously, every area of the country is different, from Fort Collins to Rhode Island to Orlando, Florida. It's all different markets. It's all different prices and variables involved in that. What is your opinion on what's going to happen with the interest rates within the next few years? Are they going to go down? Are they going to continue to rise? Are they going to stay in the middle? How it's going to affect the housing prices? I know it's tough. I know you're not Nostradamus, but you do have some sort of idea.
It's a really big problem. There is a very good pick for the U.S. Treasury, Mr. Bessemer. He's a smart man, well-managed, understands stuff, and so forth. So could he keep the game going longer because the U.S. dollar is a business of trust?
But doesn't he have less power than Powell does?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Powell was the most powerful man because we let him be the most powerful man in the world, right? Because it's a very difficult question as to when. But my point is simply this: there's $36 trillion of debt, to be rough with the numbers, whatever. We have to roll $17 trillion over the next 3 years, because we borrowed too short. It's highly likely that when last year they thought there were going to be 7 rate cuts and there were basically 2, and the market now thinks there'll be almost none, that it could be that we're in a recession, they just start cutting rates. Here's the real problem. We start cutting rates because we're going to have a recession, right? By the way, if G starts going down, if Musk wins, we're going to have a recession. The economy's part G, government. So let's say that happens. The real question is simply this, and I don't know the answer, but I think that if they start cutting rates, when they started cutting rates, real interest rates went up. 10-year bond yields went up. They went from 3.6 to 4.8. Now they're like 4.4. Usually they all go down. But I think it's because there's too much debt. If they cut rates really a lot, you could see a really steep yield curve. We say yield curve. The 2-year could yield 2, right? But the 10-year could yield 5 because people don't want to own this stuff for 10 years because the debt's too big. And then you'll have higher mortgage rates. The only way out of this problem now, because the debt's too big, is they're going to have to do something about repressing rates. And by repressing rates, I mean they just say the 10-year yields 4. Or the Fed starts buying the 10-year bond or 30-year bond. That's outstanding. They keep issuing less of them. This is the conundrum that we're in because of Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump. It's too much debt, folks. We all know it. It's the question of when the musical game stops. The music stops. And what makes it stop? I don't know the answer to that. But we're going to have higher real rates. So even if inflation goes down to 2 from 3, I don't see the 10-year bond coming down a full point. Yeah. If inflation went to 0, I still think you'd have a 10-year bond yielding 4. That's a 4% real rate. That's how you have a recession again, because that's really high interest rates, because interest rates in a nominal term are not as important as what they are in a real term. Real term meaning versus inflation.
So
If
we're
oil,
looking,
if oil
but
prices went to $50 a barrel over the next 6 months,
yeah,
you would then see the PPI, the producer prices, come down. You would see inflation come down for a short period of time, even if they were printing some money, because oil is in everything, right? You would see prices come down, not to go to deflation, but you'd still have high real rates because we borrowed too much money when rates were zero. And so it gets to the other question. The interest on the debt is now 20% of what we collect. It's going to be 30.
yeah.
How do we pay it? All these things go to the fact that we borrowed too much money when rates were too low for too long, and Powell and the people before him should be arrested. They should be arrested.
So let me ask you this, because it seems like we're going to be looking at more homelessness then, due to the mortgage rates, due to
Yeah.
rent is going to keep going up. People can't afford
I
that.
don't know that. A lot of apartments are coming on. There could be a flood of new apartments. Prices of houses are actually going down. People
Okay.
don't see as much because new big builders are offering 4%. So I don't have the calculator to do it right.
But there is a problem with commercial real estate right now.
Giant problem. Yeah, they're not coming back. Buildings.
Yeah.
So, but those are problems for them.
But they're going to turn a lot of these commercial real estate properties into apartments because of the size.
It's hard to do. It's costly to do. It can be.
Oh, okay.
But right now, prices for real estate are actually coming down for single family homes, and you don't notice it as much. One, people don't want to leave their home because they got 2.8% mortgage. They're not leaving. So you don't see as many sales. Two, D.R. Horton and the big publicly traded companies are offering 3% mortgages that they internalize, right? Instead of the 7% that they should be, but that 4% difference is hurting D.R. Horton. But it's effectively, I'm just going to make the number up in my head. It's effectively lowering a $500,000 home to $430,000 by selling it at $500,000 with a 4% mortgage or 3% mortgage, a new home. So prices are coming down, and you always get surprised on one side or the other. Prices went too high, so it could be years of stagnation of real estate prices, or in some markets like in Florida, where hurricanes, insurance, condo. We don't do the whole story on condos, right? Old condos and people can't get out of them, and there's a real problem.
Yeah.
So that's why Fort Collins was where I live was a good place to live, because more people keep moving here. And but I think it's a very difficult thing. But I think that the issue is when we have high real rates because we borrow too much, we are slowing the economy or causing recession, and we're going to have a crisis over the debt because we can't pay the interest on it someday.
But an unemployment number of 4% right now is BS. That's not a real number. The number is higher than that. You agree with that as well?
It is higher than that because the way they measure it and the people that they call, it's very difficult.
Because there's a lot of people that aren't looking for work.
Right. The way
they just dropped out.
Exactly. The way that they measure this, if you've dropped out and said, to hell with it, I'm looking for a job, you're not in that unemployment number.
Right.
So that's one thing to take, and a lot of people are starting to do that. Yes, the unemployment number is truly higher than the way they measure it. They measure things inaccurately. You see this happening when they have to do the reconciliations every so often, where they actually say, oh, there weren't as many jobs created. We're off by 800,000. This happens every year. It's because they still do the same system for trying to measure it, and people don't. It's like trying to poll anything. Who tells people the truth anymore? I mean, many people, if I get a call right now, let's say and I get a call right now, I said, let's just do this. Let's have some fun. And they're calling from some polling organization about Colorado, blah, blah, blah. I would just be like, yeah, no, right? What do I care if it's the right answer? Think about it. Does anybody actually give the right answers? How do you measure the wrong answers? That's a problem with unemployment numbers. They actually call people. Are you looking for a job? Oh, because how do you even know? Like it's almost humorous now. It's even worth measuring, because how do you now know what's going on? How do you do polling if you can't get people on the phone because nobody answers?
Yeah, that's true.
Combine that with people who are just busting chops now.
I mean, we'll just end on that. But I do think that that number is close to 7, 8, 9%.
And remember this. I agree with you. And remember this one last thought, though. Everything we talked about, the interest on the national debt is now so large that unless someone gets to the crux of the problem that you mentioned, the big problem, we're doomed. We're doomed to like a really bad time in American history that's coming very soon.
So, but then let's pause there and go and rewind here. So, what is the doom? Are we talking about 1920?
No, no, nothing like that. We're talking like the Fed has to do something, and the people who own treasury bonds, and this is, people will think I'm crazy saying this. All of a sudden, you're going to wake up on a Monday morning, and the treasuries all yield 2%, because we'll have $40 trillion of debt, and they've got to take the interest payment down to 800 billion. So you bought a bond yielding 6%. You're totally hosed. It collapses. Pension funds go broke. That's one way to handle the problem. Now, if they handle it that way, and this is something, I'm not a crazy man.
You'd have millions of people more on the street.
Not millions, but you'd have everybody taking a hit overnight. You'd have people taking large losses. But if someone could present the other way to do this, like what's the other way? Folks, what's going to happen? Like, why do people playing like it's not happening? Interest on the debt was 230 billion about 7 years ago.
Because
Right?
people don't give a shit. They don't understand what you're saying, and they don't want to understand.
There's only so many ways this can happen. They either don't pay if they don't pay the interest on the debt one day, or here's another way. No foreigners get paid, so 8 trillion goes away.
Yeah.
Now, you can't issue another treasury bond the next day. You can't issue one for 3 years. Or you keep doing it and the dollar collapses. And go play the Richard Nixon speech when we got off the gold standard. Because people think the dollar is strong, but is it strong versus gold? Not really. Gold's really strong. No. So Nixon said, if you don't leave the country, you really won't notice. and even then, I played the tape and I'm like, someone didn't like start laughing, or what are you? He actually played the tape. He said it in 72 or 74, whatever he said it. He says it. You won't notice. Seems like people noticed. Anyway, that's the other big problem. You can say whatever the hell you want. You can lie all day long, and people are now so stupid, I guess, that they don't notice.
Yeah.
I'm going to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. No penalty. No one gives a vote. Right? Not going to tax tips. I'm going to balance the budget, pay up all the debt. No one's... Listen, the beginning we talked about education. Because education's been so bad, you have millions of people who have no idea what we're talking about.
No, right.
Couldn't pay attention more than 3 seconds into the show.
They dropped out a long time ago.
They got to go on TikTok. How about the TikTok thing? It's against the law for the open. It's against the law.
Yeah. You know that the Chinese have their TikTok? It only has educational stuff. But ours, we got girls shaking their ass with thongs on and all kinds of...
And like a million hits for someone selling bikini, or some lady in a bikini trying to look serious, but really get you to look at it. I did it for a little while in the campaign because I said to my wife, like everything else, I got to do this so I can see how bad it is, right? So I did it for a month in the campaign. I shut the whole thing down. I'm like, the people who go, when it goes viral, it's viral because it's crazy. But that's America. Yeah. That's what 23-year-olds are doing. Go try to find and engage them on something important. It's like, oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, the national debt. Oh, no, I got to do the TikTok. I wonder if how about this one? When you're walking around in Europe, this is every foreigner meaning Chinese Oriental person, is walking around and videotaping themselves as they walk through the Vatican. Not when I put up on Facebook a picture of the Vatican, or my wife and I once in a while, they're videotaping live for their friends. And you say, well, wait a second. What's this? I actually watch some people. They do it for a half hour straight. They're walking and talking. I keep wishing there's a fountain in front of them or a giant body of water they can just plunge into, you know? But that's half the people at the Vatican. Half the people at the Vatican. I was in the Vatican in Rome, a religious organization, a Catholic church, all these things to learn about, and half the people. Not looking at, oh, wow, the Sistine Chapel. Oh, wow, Royale. They're just like looking at themselves, telling people they're there. So what hope is there? Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Uh,
Maybe we'll get George
hey,
Allen.
Steve, before you leave, tell the audience about what the thoughts were about Trump winning in Europe, because you went all over the place.
Well, okay, so this is kind of funny. Whenever I go to Europe now, since I get out of the race in 23, I immediately went to Europe, went to like 20 places, whatever. And everywhere I go, I have, and especially if I'm in Ireland, for example, because there's articles about me in Ireland. But everywhere I go, if there's any question, I say I'm the first person to run against Trump. So I ran against Trump. That's all they know. And they want to give me free food. They hate him so badly. It's like, I don't mean to say it, but it's actually a great way to make friends. Like I ran against Trump. And oh, and they look at it, because I'll put up an article about me, the first one run against Trump, the first one take on Trump. And then if I'm in Ireland, there's a great article about me taking on Trump that people are like, whoa, you're from Ireland. So I use that all the time. And it's actually a great
It's a great
but they really
it's a
do.
great way to get a free meal.
Yes, they really do hate him. It's really fun. It's really fun. My wife gets a little nervous because I just pulled out in the Netherlands. Oh yeah, you want to know who I am? I'm this guy. And they're like, they stare at it and they go, wow. I did it in Istanbul, which I like to call Constantinople, with a cab driver. I'll end it with this.
Yeah.
This guy named Heidi. He doesn't speak any, he's talking through this machine and, he doesn't speak any, but I told him I was a mayor and I ran against Trump. And I think we're getting in an accident. He's calling all his friends that I'm a famous person. And he gets people to take me places for the day for nothing. He gets people to walk with me to see stuff in the middle of the city. And then he gets people to make me cut the line to go into the underground cistern. Oh, and then when I get back, there are cab drivers who are like slapping five with me because they think I'm a famous. It was really quite funny. So that's how I started using it. Sorry to end with this. You have to have some sense of humor, right? But it was really funny. Like I could just say I ran against Trump and I could just live in Europe.
Yeah. And you'd be really saving money. You get free meals every day.
I'd be like a cop in 1970 in New York. Hey, just give me a cup of coffee. I ran against Trump. Oh, give a guy a Danish.
All right, Steve.
All right, love you, buddy.
SteveLaffey.com. Thanks so much.
All right, see you, man.
All right.